1. First thing to know, I'm completely immune to lidocaine. Yes, this is a thing. Didn't discover this until I was an adult, and it suddenly made sense why I hated dentists so much. Ever since, I've made sure to put this on every dentist intake form, usually under allergies, closest a form usually has. Second, I chipped one of my front teeth when I was a teen. Every once in a while, I have to go in and get it resealed due to wear and tear. I was in college and the tooth needed to be resealed. I decided to try the dentist next to the campus, as they had a good deal with our insurance. Standard I'm a poor college student decisions. I get into my appointment, and an assistant starts prepping me for the procedure. In the chair, pop on the bib, etc. She then takes the tiny needle and pokes me in the gums to freeze me up. Exposed nerves and a broken tooth are painful. As I'm sure you already guessed, she used Novocaine. Not that I knew at first. She'll be assistant for dental assistant, and I'm me. After waiting a few minutes for the shot to work, she starts poking around. I immediately feel sharp pain as she does, and start tensing up. Hold still, I know it feels weird. It hurts. No, that's just the pressure, it's okay. No, it hurts. She takes her fingers and scrapey equipment out of my mouth. I already numbed you, it can't hurt. It does though. Really? She sighs and tells me to look up. While I do, she pokes me in the gums and I jump. Looks like I have to give you another shot. Now at this point, there's been zero numbing effect. I can feel everything. Are you using Novocaine? Actually, it's called lidocaine. Novocaine is a trade name, but yes. I put on my intake form not to use Novocaine, I'm immune to it. You're not immune to lidocaine, no one is. I'll just give you another shot. I am, and it won't work. Please use something else. Any other numbing agent works just fine. It's only Novocaine that doesn't work on me. You don't know what you're talking about. Let me do my job. I sigh and get ready to argue when I remember something. I pay a flat rate, and I have nowhere to be. Cue malicious compliance. Okay. So she gives me another shot. We wait a few minutes. She makes me look at the ceiling and pokes me after a few seconds. I couldn't see her do it, but I could definitely feel it. She gives me another shot and repeats. Doesn't work. Gives me another and another. She gave me 4 shots of Novocaine. And I felt every painful poke and prod. 4 needles in a row, even the small ones they use, not fun. But I was committed. After the 5th shot, my mouth finally started to go numb. Hey, that worked! I guess it just takes a lot. I switched to a different agent for that shot. The dentist was finally called in. And he was pissed. Not only had I wasted at least an hour of their time and pushed back a bunch of appointments, all those extra shots meant they were now taking a loss for my procedure. My payment was far less than they'd had to spend on all that Novocaine. The dentist made her leave the room, did my reseal in about 15 minutes and barely spoke a word. After we were done, I double-checked the amount I was paying, it was fine, and requested a second copy of the cost breakdown and receipts just in case. The receptionist was clearly puzzled at the length of my appointment, and why the dentist and assistant were so grouchy. But I don't think she'd been filled in. Best part, about a month later, they sent me a second bill for all those extra shots. I called them and pointed out their fee policy, was told my bill was a mistake and to ignore it. They then continued to send me a bill for those shots once a month until I moved over a year later. It never showed up on my credit history, and I definitely never went back. As a few people have pointed out, Novocaine is not the same as lidocaine. I was specifically told I have an insensitivity to lidocaine, as well as a higher tolerance to most anesthetics. I woke up in the middle of an arm surgery. Please keep in mind that this is in Canada, not the US. Regulations differ between regions, including who can and cannot administer medication in an official capacity. I know this is low-grade MC compared to a lot of posts, but at the very least I cost this office money in the end for not listening to me and complying with the assistant's request to let me do my job. If nothing else, it's been interesting to learn how many have had similar experiences. I've learned the hard way it's important to be your own advocate in these situations. Even if you end up being wrong about it, having your team double-check is a good thing. We're all human, after all. 2. Years ago, I worked as the sole hourly employee on a team with salaried workers. This designation had been a mistake on my initial contract, and my cool boss said she would switch me to salary just as soon as my first-year contract was up. Unfortunately for me, just before my anniversary, my cool boss left, and a bitchy co-worker got promoted. Request denied. No reason given other than, "I don't think it's necessary." A few weeks later, we had this event that had been planned by cool boss, but since she left the company, it fell to new bitchy boss and the rest of us workers to staff it. The location for this event was nearly an hour away from the office. Everyone else could just show up to the location, but being hourly, I had to first go to the office, clock in, then drive an hour. Oh well, guess I get paid for travel time. The night before the event, we had hired a set building team to put everything together, but someone from our company had to stay until they were finished, per contract with the location. Bitchy boss decided to make me stay as I was her least favorite, so the rest of the team left and went home. Well, there were major issues with the set, and by 10 p.m., it was just me and the one set builder left in the place, as he was trying to make this thing work. Set builder didn't care as he was making a ton of overtime, and besides, this particular configuration had been 100% his idea, so he was determined to solve it. I decided I didn't care because I had found some cushions to sleep on. I ended up dozing from about 11 p.m. to 5 a.m. when he finally finished and we could leave. I then drove an hour to the office, clocked out and went home, which was thankfully a short drive. I had an hour to shower, change and go back to the office to clock in, then drive an hour to meet everyone back at the location at 8 a.m. We then worked the event with bitchy boss again, assigning me to stay later than her to supervise breakdown. So, in a 36-hour window, I ended up being on the clock for 33 of those hours. Monday morning, bitchy boss has to approve and submit payroll, and only then does she realize she has to pay me time and a half for those 33 hours. She actually had the gall to be mad at me for not warning her about all the overtime, which made me laugh as I explained, "I didn't think that was necessary, since it was your idea to keep me hourly, boss." For those asking, here is the explanation of why I wanted to be salaried instead of hourly. At this job, salaried workers had a lot more freedom than hourly employees. For example, salary didn't have to clock in and out, so if traffic was bad coming back from lunch, or if they had to leave a little early for a dentist appointment, it was no problem. As an hourly employee, if I was even 1 minute off from my designated hours of 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. with the 60-minute break, I was in trouble. Have to leave early for a dentist appointment? I would have to put in a time-off request and wait for it to be approved before I could take the appointment, and my hours and pay would be docked that week, unless I used vacation time for the time I was gone. It was just very annoying to be the only person in my department who had to jump through so many hoops every day. The aftermath, for those wondering? Nothing major changed for me immediately after that, and I didn't get fired. That many OT hours did raise several red flags for her boss and the accounting department. She got majorly scolded but essentially forgiven as she was a brand new boss. I had already been looking for other jobs, so by the time my contract was ending, I was able to walk out. For those interested, the story of how I left is, less than 6 months later, I was sitting in a review, a contract renewal meeting with bitchy boss and her boss. As yet another power move, I had been trying to schedule this meeting for weeks, but bitchy boss decided she was just too busy, and I had to wait until the very last day of my contract. I had been keeping my department afloat, plus assisting with 2 other departments who had people out on various medical leaves, meeting all deadlines while maintaining 0 minutes of OT and 40 hours a week, which impressed the hell out of everyone but bitchy boss. I asked for a small raise and to be made salary with my new contract. Bitchy boss doesn't even blink, immediately denies my raise and my request to switch to salary. So I smile and whip out my letter of resignation stating that I would be leaving at the end of my contract, which was ending that day at 5 p.m. on the dot. And I whipped out an offer letter for my new job with my starting salary of $12,000 more. She looked shocked. Her boss looked a little pale, and I stood up, shook their hands, thanked them profusely for their time, and walked out the door to start packing up my stuff. In the end, I left on excellent terms with everyone but her. Those other departments I was helping, I helped them remotely for a hefty consulting fee until they were restaffed, even after starting my new job. I offered to do the same for my department, but bitchy boss assured her boss that she could get someone in there quickly to fill my shoes. Took 3 months to find someone qualified. They left after 4 months of working under bitchy boss. And then the company closed that position entirely, and bitchy boss had to beg other departments for assistance on a project-by-project basis. Less than 2 years after I left, the revolving door of people due to bitchy boss's mismanagement caused the entire department to shut down. Everyone there at the time was laid off. 3. We work in airline crew scheduling, where our jobs essentially involve ensuring each flight is fully crewed. This requires us to strictly adhere to many rules, including aviation regulations set by the Federal Aviation Administration, and collective bargaining agreements, CBAs, upheld by the pilot and flight attendant unions. However, some of the rules in the CBA can be a little flexible, especially when we can offer pilots additional compensation and they agree to waive certain contractual provisions in exchange. There is a CBA rule for this airline that outlines when and for how long a pilot can be on reserve, a window of time in which they are essentially on call in case we need them to work, and states that if we have an assignment for them, it must start within that window, or it's not contractually legal. However, we would frequently offer pilots additional compensation, usually a full day's worth of pay, if they agree to waive that provision and work trips that start outside of their reserve window. 99% of the time, pilots would accept this additional compensation. Very rarely, in extreme circumstances, we could offer even more pay, sometimes up to 200%, and only if the flight would otherwise be cancelled and cause expensive operational disruptions. I should point out that while most pilots are fantastic to work with, a certain percentage of them are very arrogant and entitled. It's an attitude that frequently occurs in the pilot population. I don't know why. I've worked in the industry for many years, and the same personality tends to appear quite often, more so at the regional airline level, less so in major or legacy airlines. Anyone else who has worked with pilots before can attest to this. The arrogant attitude is especially pronounced towards crew schedulers, though, because we get to be the bad guys and make them go to work. This story concerns a pilot with this attitude and personality who was on reserve. We had a 4-day trip starting in Detroit, DTW, that we needed to find a captain for, but we did not have any DTW-based reserve captains that were legal to work it. The trip started around noon the next day, and it was currently late evening the day prior, about 18 hours before the trip started. There was a captain on reserve at that moment and for the next 4 days, but he was scheduled for evenings and the trip started outside his reserve window. So I called him and customarily offered him a full day's extra pay to immediately go to bed and come back the following morning for this trip. He flat out refuses my offer, and then proceeds to tell me that I should offer him 200% for the entire trip instead. So basically 4 days of extra pay. I explain that it's against our procedures to offer that much extra pay just to show up early, and even so, we would have to offer that level of compensation to other pilots in seniority order first. He adamantly and rudely proclaims that there is no way he is going to work an illegal assignment unless he gets 200%. I say okay, and hang up. At that point, I came up with a brilliant plan. I look up our airline's flight schedule and find out there is a late flight leaving soon to go to Tampa, TPA, and a flight the following morning that operates from TPA back to DTW. So I rebuild the open trip with all the same flights as before, except now it's a 5-day trip that begins with these 2 flights as deadheads. A deadhead is basically a flight that the pilot does not operate. They usually ride with the passengers or in the cockpit jump seat. So he would fly as a passenger to Tampa, stay in a hotel, then fly as a passenger back to DTW just in time to work the flights I had previously asked him to work. The new trip was completely legal per the CBA, and it now started comfortably within the captain's reserve window. So I assign it to him and call him back. He, of course, is not happy about it. He asks me to change it back and agrees that he will now take the extra day of pay, but I decline. The trip is legal now, and I don't need to change it or offer any extra pay for him to work it. I then ice the cake a bit. I humbly and calmly offer to let him deviate off the scheduled deadheads, which normally means the pilot will not take the deadheads and will instead find their own transportation to the city from which their first operating flight departs, which in this case is his home city. I did the math later, and I found that even if he did not deviate, the cost of a non-revenue seat on both flights and paying for a hotel and TPA amounted to less than a full day's pay at his pay rate. There was no additional pay for the longer trip either, since he was getting paid for each of the 5 reserve days now anyway. My MC actually saved the company a little money. 4. Little backstory here, I am a professional mechanic, and have been for a little over 10 years. I specialize in diagnostics and heavy repair at a do-all shop. Basically, we work on all makes and models. Now, being a mechanic, we have seen the spectrum of customers who get mad over something they did, bad parts, and whatnot. But this story, even after 5 years, still makes me chuckle. It was a normal day when this lady drove her Hyundai van in for a diagnostic. Think of an older-looking Karen, nothing unusual about her at first. She comes up and says her check engine light came on, and the car just does not want to move like it used to. No problem, I tell her, as we write up the work order and everything. I get to work while she waits. Upon pulling the van in, I notice it's making a noise, so I shut it down and immediately plugged in my scanner to read the computers in the car for errors. A bunch of error codes pop up. After looking over them, I see they all lead in the direction of timing issues. The car sees different positions for mechanical parts in the engine. My thought is, oh, timing belt jumped, easy. Timing belt is a very critical part of some engines. It keeps the crankshaft and camshafts in perfect alignment. So I open the hood and go to pull the covers to expose the belt and check the condition. I had to take a few steps and let out a very audible "holy shit" with part of the cover off. I found half the belt missing, most likely disintegrated from age, and the other is literally about to break completely. I see a few strands left holding this belt together. It's a miracle it ran even to get into my bay. Just an FYI, this particular engine is designed with tight tolerances, such as if the timing is too far off, it basically destroys the engine. The valves slam into the pistons, broken metal, banging, bad things that cost a lot of money. We look it over and see the vehicle is 30k past the recommended change for a timing belt. It's amazing this thing runs. We inform the customer and bring her out to the shop and show her what we found. We try to explain it in as layman terms as possible while still respecting her. Some old ladies know their shit on cars, it's crazy. She sees it, and from my story appears to understand completely. I inform her it's a miracle it even drove in. I highly recommend she not drive it or even start the engine until after the belt has been replaced. We go up front, and I go over a timing belt replacement package with her cost of labor and parts. She flat out goes,
"No, I don't trust you people."
We get that a lot. I try to answer any questions she might have, but no, she's not having any of it. I let her know we will price match any in town, and that I have already marked it down way below normal price to try and help her out. But again, no, she wants her car back. I suggest she tow it to where she wants, and she flips on me.
"I drove my car in, I am going to drive it out."
Okay. I immediately have her sign a waiver that she understands what can happen and we are not liable. By this point, we have reassembled the covers and pushed the van out to the parking lot. I again try to reason with her that it's a bad idea to run this engine. The belt replacement is only a few $100s versus $5k for a replacement engine.
"No, I'm driving it."
She almost refused to pay for her diagnostic fee. Until I told her I can hold the car indefinitely without payment. This whole time I'm trying to be nice, but by now she's been screaming at me and my co-workers for 30 minutes, saying I'm holding her vehicle hostage and that I'm trying to sell her parts she knows she does not need. And as for the MC, I handed her the keys, which she basically ripped from my hands and stormed out. We all kinda gathered to see if it would even start. We heard the engine crank, fire up, then BAM! Followed by a stall. We couldn't believe it. She attempted to start it again, this time just the engine free spinning with no compensation. The belt broke, and the engine had been damaged. Oh great, here goes the next hour of my life, though I'm trying hard not to laugh. She opened her car door with enough force that I'm surprised it did not break. She starts screaming at me, telling me I sabotaged her and I have to fix it. We informed her of her choices, and that only made her turn a shade of red I did not think possible. She kind of went into a scream and squeal yell thing that I can't explain. I only made out a few words like lawyer, sue, cops, as well as every expletive in the book. She told me if we did not fix it, she would call the police, corporate managers, Yelp. The whole thing. We just said we warned her beforehand, but she did not listen. The fault was hers, and hers only. She starts screaming in the parking lot, and we just went back inside, laughing with a few of our other customers who were waiting. They heard it all. About 10 minutes later, our local police shows up demanding to know what happened and how we destroyed her car. I go over it with them, away from her. We show them our photo evidence attached to the work order and the written release of liability she signed. They agreed with us. Watching them walk back to her and seeing the grin slowly turn to disbelief was priceless. The van sat in our lot for almost a month while she tried to get her management and corp to pay for it. They all denied it. We got a few calls from lawyers who we presented our evidence to, who also said she had nothing. I think the best part of this entire ordeal is when she finally came to have it towed. We informed her she owed us a lot in storage fees. At $15 a day after the 7th day of work completed. The diagnostic she paid was the completed work. Cue Velociraptor screeches. Now I want to make a point. Mechanics get a bad name. 1 out of every 100 shops might screw people over, it's true. I try my damnedest to prevent that. Even giving work away if the situation calls for it. But there was no helping this person. Hell, had she been nice and informed me of money issues or something, I probably would have done the job for damn near nothing to help out. A lot of mechanics don't want to screw you out of money. We just want to make sure your huge investment stays in good shape. 5. This happened today while I was at work. I work at a gas station that has a pretty good pizza place in it. And tonight I was working pretty much alone, getting hammered with orders coming in non-stop. About halfway through my rush, an online order comes through, and almost immediately the phone rings. I drop what I'm doing and go answer expecting another order, but it was just a customer, let's call her Karen, wanting to confirm that her online order had came through. I asked the name and confirmed the order with the Karen. It was 1 large all-meat pizza, and I very specifically remember confirming this because she said that was correct, and she would be using a coupon for it. I didn't really think anything of it and went back to work making the pies. Jump ahead about an hour toward the end of the rush and the phone rings. I again prepare to take another order, but instead am greeted by an angry customer saying that I messed up their pizza. I apologize and asked for the name so that I could look up the order, and she says Karen. It has not been that long, and I remember the name saying absent-mindedly, "Oh yeah, I remember the order. You called to confirm, and I remember we agreed the order was correct."
Well, the order I put in was for the all-meat, but I wanted it with only double pepperoni on one half and only cheese on the other half.
Okay, let me just pull up the record and we can get this sorted out for you.
The only way to sort it out is for you to make me what I ordered.
By this time I had the order slip pulled up on the screen and could clearly see that there were no special instructions, but was not really looking forward to telling that to Karen, so I politely ask if she would mind holding while I talk with my manager to solve the issue, and she agrees. I head over to the manager's office and explain the situation to her. She is a very easygoing person, and I love working for her because she will almost always just tell us to use our best judgment. The pizza here is super overpriced, and the profit margin for a single pie is somewhere around 400%. She said to just make whatever she wants, and I agreed. Back on the phone, I tell Karen that I would be happy to make the correct order for her and ask her exactly what she wanted.
I want a large hand-tossed crust with only double pepperoni on one half and only cheese on the other half.
I repeated exactly what she said and was told yes, it was correct. I tell Karen to give me 15 minutes and she could pick up her pizza. Here is where the MC comes into play. I make exactly what she ordered. I rolled out the large crust, tossed it out to a large size, put it in a pan, added a layer of pepperoni on one half, and put cheese over the other half. I'm sure most of you know how a pizza is prepared, and can tell that there was a step skipped in there. You know, pizza sauce. Karen did not ask for sauce on the pizza, and I made sure that I let my manager know I made exactly what she ordered to help cover my backside when she called in to complain. When Karen came in to pick up her pizza, I had my manager take it out to her and ask her if her order was correct, reading from the slip. Large hand-tossed crust with only double pepperoni on one half and only cheese on the other half. Karen smiled and said yes, then took her pie and left. Jumped to the end of my shift, and my manager let me know that Karen had called in to demand a refund for her pizza because it had no sauce and was dry. Manager refused because she went over the order with Karen before she left with the pizza and told her she got exactly what she ordered. 6. I had a boss who told me not to tell him how to put a computer together because he already knows how and I don't need your unsolicited advice. Okay. Strap yourselves in for the background. I am a woman in the tech industry. Do you already see where this is going? Not only was I a tech at this place, I was the tech. The one who trained 80% of the techs, had the highest numbers in district, and top 10 in the territory. But I always went by my last name, so anyone who wasn't physically in my store thought I was a male. Due to circumstances, we ended up getting a new manager from another store out of state. His first day was on my day off. My coworkers told me he wanted 2 hours with each of us to learn our thoughts on diagnosing issues, and he was really eager to learn from us. He was especially interested to learn from the top tech who he heard about in his previous store, until he learned I was a woman. He did 2-hour sessions with all the other techs but me. He always went to the male techs with questions. He tried to make me work the counter to just check computers in, when I was one of the only 3 full-time repair techs and we had 7 counter techs. He tried to make me do his paperwork on several occasions. He also started trying to repair computers by himself, even though that was not his job. He would leave computers half repaired with no notes, then write up whatever tech he thought should pick it up where I left off. Ass. The whole team hated him and started making remarks of, "Well, OP could fix this if you asked her," or "I think OP fixed something similar in an hour, and you've been at this for 2 days." And other phrases to piss him off that a woman knew more than him. This was the perfect setup to one of my favorite moments of my career. Manager got it in his head that he was going to do something to prove he knew his stuff. So when a customer came in wanting a custom-built computer, which we weren't supposed to do, he grabbed the opportunity. He helped the guy pick out the parts, compare prices, and sold him the labor to put it all together. He also told me he was going to build it in my repair space, and he was doing this alone. And, I will never forget this, "Don't tell me how to do this, let me learn." Oh, I will. Cue the manager putting this machine together on the bench behind me, while I continued my work, just waiting. Manager has it together, hits the power switch. Computer turns on, then off, then on, then off. He unplugs and takes it apart, then together again, same result. I can hear the wheels turning behind me, but he told me not to give him advice. So I keep working with my mouth shut, let him ask me when he's good and ready. He then believes parts must be bad, so he has the customer send parts back, waits for the new ones, then try again, same result. This continues for 2 months. He has the customer, who is obviously very angry at this point, send every single part back, then have a whole new set of parts delivered. He has promised the customer this is the last time. This time it will work. He definitely knows what he is doing. The day arrives where the customer brings in the parts. The manager is there. I am there. I stop repairing computers as he puts the final part in, and I lean against my bench to watch what is about to happen. How could I not? He hits the power. Same result. He is furious. He throws the screwdriver across the bench, denting the wall, and curses so loudly I'm sure a customer heard. He puts his hands on either side of the machine, head down, shoulders slumped, utterly defeated. In a quiet, oh so quiet voice, he asks, "Oh, P, what's wrong with it?" The motherboard and processor aren't compatible without a BIOS update. How long have you known this? Since you first turned it on 2 months ago. He turns, he is red in the face, veins are bulging, and I'm pretty sure he thought about decking me for a second before composing himself with a very, very deep breath. Why didn't you say anything then? I smile sweetly. Because you told me not to, and to let you learn. So, have you learned? He stormed off and out of the store. He ended up taking 2 personal days, and I ended up building a new PC that actually worked. My team was 14 male techs plus me. They all knew what I was doing, and also didn't offer advice. They bought me a lot of drinks that day. Customer was cool once I explained everything, and even showed them how I cable managed to allow the best cooling and looks with their clear case. It's a story that ended up being the legendary story to tell all new techs. I left the company a few months later for a higher-paying job, and that manager ended up getting fired due to my GM believing him the reason for my leaving. I never corrected that perspective. After all, how else will he learn? 7. I shall set the scene. The UK has just been hit by the Beast from the East at the start of 2018. As per usual, when there is the slightest bit of adverse weather in the UK, the rail system is up the wall, and trying to travel to the station, let alone actually commute into London, is proving difficult. I work in IT on a service desk, and therefore basically take phone calls, remote onto people's machines, and then go to their desk if absolutely necessary. Our service desk split these tasks so that someone is on desk side, whilst the rest are on calls, and if your call escalates to the need for a desk-side visit, you pass it over. I spoke with my line manager ahead of the impending storm to say that the areas some of our team lived, including myself, were due to get hit hard, and therefore it may be prudent to test our home setups, in case we needed to provide support from home. This was a worst-case scenario. The Beast from the East hit, and the weather worsened, and the snow hit the fan. Monday morning, I wake up to a wall of white and call my manager to say that I will struggle to make it to the station, let alone the office. A quick check of the rail website reveals cancellations and delays galore. Manager says not a problem. She has had some other calls of the same nature and has asked that I get logged in remotely to handle calls and resolve issues remotely where possible. Some of our team live in central London and have managed to make it into the office, so they will handle desk-side visits. This same setup continues on Tuesday and Wednesday as well. It works well. The people at home answer the phone calls and take care of what they can, whilst passing anything they can't to the people in the office to do local visits. There aren't a huge amount of people in the office due to the weather conditions anyway. Over the Tuesday and Wednesday, I hear rumblings that the head of IT, my manager's manager, is unhappy with the fact that some of the service desk are getting to work from home, and I've been keeping an eye on the weather and the train situation, and neither has improved a great deal. Thursday morning, there has been no extra snow overnight, and my train company declares that they can run some extra services. But they will still be limited, and they will be slow trains, so delays are expected. However, the road conditions to get to my local station are still abysmal, so I call my manager again and say trains are getting there, but the roads are still rubbish. Happy for me to man the phones from home again today, and she is fine with that, as expected. I head downstairs, get logged in nice and early, and start helping out. I know that my manager is doing me a favor by not forcing me to come in, and so I am happy to do her a favor and help out where I can. Then, at around 9 a.m., I get a call from my manager stating that, "You need to come into work now. Head of IT has decided that if he can make it into the office, so can everyone else. If you can't, you need to take a holiday." Cue malicious compliance. A couple of my colleagues who live real far say they cannot make it into work, so they take holiday. I don't really fancy using my holidays since the head of IT is being unreasonable, so I say that I will head in. I tell my manager that I don't know how long it will take me, and she says, "That's fine, I'll see you when you get here." So I sign out of my computer, and I get myself booted and wrapped up, and head out into the cold, 9:15 a.m. I haven't prepared my car at all this week, so it is covered in snow, and has been sitting cold. So I start clearing the windshield and the sides, and then start on the roof. Need to make sure the car is clear of snow before heading off to be safe for myself and others. Once all the snow is clear, I start her up and let her idle for a little while. Don't want to cause damage to my car setting off from cold, and this allows the inside to get warm and the windscreen to clear off fully. 9:45 a.m. I set off for the station. The roads are, as presumed, terrible. I can't drive at anywhere near normal speed, and considering it is now 10 a.m., the roads are busier than when I leave for work normally. My normal 15-minute drive turns into an hour, and I can't even make it to my normal parking area, as the roads are even worse there than where I started. 11 a.m., I abandon the car and start walking. It's slippery, even in heavy-duty boots, so I take my time. No point injuring myself trying to get to work. As I get closer to my station, the pathways clear up as they have gritted, thankfully. 11:30, I get to the station. This is normally a 20 to 25-minute journey. The trains are buggered. All reports that I had seen about them being back to relative normality is bullshit. There are lots of people milling around waiting for a train, and a quick chat with the station staff reveals the last one came in an hour ago, and there isn't another one in sight at the moment. I knew this moment was coming, so I find a seat, pull out my thermos, and get to waiting. A train finally arrives at 1 p.m., set to head into London. Normally a 45-minute journey. The poor soul driving the train apologizes for the delays, and warns us that despite stopping at less stations, we are still in for a journey. I won't bore you with the particulars, but when he said we were in for a long one considering the weather, I thought he did quite well. We got to our station in London for 3:30 p.m. Luckily for me, my office was just around the corner from the station, so I rocked up at 3:45 p.m. I got settled in and logged in, said hello to my colleagues and manager, and then had a look at the time. Would you look at that? It's 4 p.m. I started at 8 a.m., so I finish at 4 p.m. So I logged out, said bye to my colleagues and my manager, and started the trip home. To answer some questions that I'm sure will come out of this, my manager was chill. She knew my personality and knew exactly what I was going to do, and I knew she would have my back. My colleagues found it hilarious. The head of IT was less than impressed. He had a meeting with my manager that day, and she basically told him to stuff it, as the service desk was hers to manage, and we all went back to work from home on the Friday, and some days the next week till the weather cleared up. My colleagues who took holiday got their holidays back, thanks to my manager. I got home at about 10 p.m. that night, because everyone trying to leave London was a nightmare. 8. So this happened when I was in my late teens, 17 if I recall correctly, and was still living with my mum. During this time, she had gone through a divorce with my stepdad. Let's just call him Richard. As the name applies, Richard was a real, Richard. He was smug, arrogant, saw himself smarter than everyone else, and when he gets upset, He can be a real devious bastard. Now, Richard was still living with us, as the house he was going to move in was still unlivable. So he would put on the charm, trying to get my mother to take him back, but that ship had sailed a long time ago. All while moving his stuff into his van. Very, very slowly. One day I am sitting in the dining room eating my lunch when I hear my mum and Richard arguing about something. I only recently learned that they were arguing about how the house he was meant to be moving into that was unlivable was actually very much livable. They were going back and forth as they moved their argument into the dining room. I'm just sitting there, just eating my sandwich. My mother is angry. Richard is trying to defend himself. Then a light bulb goes up over his head as that devious smile appears on his face. A smile I know all too well.
Fine, but I would move until all my stuff is in the van.
My mother is pissed, as she knew as well as I that he was dragging his heels with that. But then she collects herself. I can see the gears running, but didn't know the malicious compliance she was thinking up. My mum says with a sweet smile, "Fine," then leaves. Richard, seeming to have gotten victory, leaves too. The next morning I am in the dining room eating breakfast, and my mother is standing at the window just watching Richard, as he was leaving to go to work, taking my mother's car. Don't know why, to get there. It is an hour drive to get there, and he leaves pretty early. I can hear the car turn on, then drive off. The moment he's gone, my mother turns to me. "Hey, OP, you up for some moving?" I instantly knew what that look was about yesterday as I smiled back to her. We begin to move his stuff into his van, moving his bed, his bedside tables, all his junk, finding any kind of room to put it in the van. We did not stop, not for a break, not for anything. We were on a mission. Professional movers would have wept by how well we did this. It was like a real-life game of Tetris, rearranging pieces for the perfect fit, slipping into impossible positions. We started around 7:30. We finished at 1:30. The van was packed, and I mean packed. There was only enough room for the driver, and that's it. We celebrated with a late lunch and just sat giddy like little schoolgirls just waiting. Sure enough, about 4:30 Richard returns. Mum and I walked to the driveway to greet him. "Oh, hi, Richard. How was your day?" He still has no clue. "Oh, it was good. Dealt with some customers. Got some projects done, the usual." "That's nice. That's nice. Well, you can go now."
"What? I can't leave, I told you. I won't leave until all my stuff is in my van."
That smug smile returning to his face, it was too good. "You did say that. And there you go." I point to his packed van that was sitting only mere feet from him. He turns. He realizes the look. Beyond priceless. He turned to us, his face a combination of emotions.
"Did you two do this?"
"Us? Oh no," says Mum. "We just found it like this. Do you know what happened, OP?" I just played dumb, trying to hide my smile, failing epically. "I've no idea," I said, "but since all your stuff is in there, I guess you have no excuse to leave now." Richard just stared, a deer in the headlights. His only bargaining chip on staying was gone. Without another word and defeat written on his face, gets in the van, backs out and drives out. We turned back inside, glowing from our little achievement, knowing that we had one less Richard to deal with. 9. I used to work at a small amusement park about 8 years ago. During the weekdays, the park was generally not too busy and would close around 8 p.m. My shift was from 3:30 to 8 p.m. The rides manager's shifts were from 9:45 a.m. to 3:45 p.m. for the early shift, and 3:15 to 8:15 p.m. for the late shift. This particular day, I wasn't feeling too good. Usually when someone wasn't feeling good, they would let you work one of the easy rides, like the giant slide. All you had to do was sit at the entrance checking for height compliance and rider wristbands and passes. Since I was one of the seasoned workers, they usually had me work the more complicated rides. That day, they put me on the most complicated ride in the park, the Ferris wheel. I had told them I wasn't feeling well that day, and politely asked if I could have an easy ride that day, but our manager told me no. I pleaded, but they told me I was one of the only few there who were qualified to run that ride. So my partner and I headed to our ride, and when I got there, as luck would have it, they told us one of the buttons on the ride had gotten stuck, and they had just radioed our manager to contact maintenance to come out to fix it. When something happens with the ride that required maintenance, the rule was to close your ride and radio the manager, who in turn would radio maintenance as we were just ride workers and were not allowed. So we waited for maintenance to come fix the ride. 10 minutes goes by without them showing up. 30 minutes, an hour, 90 minutes, nothing. Maintenance at one point had even driven by in their golf cart, as if nothing was wrong. 2.5 hours go by of me sitting and getting paid to do nothing when our breakers come to relieve us for our 30-minute break. We let them know that we were still waiting on maintenance to come fix the ride. We go on our break, and my ass is happy because I was now in the air conditioning, and I basically just got paid to sit and do nothing for the last 2.5 hours, even less than what I would have done at the giant slide. While in the break room, my manager was very upset and confronts me and my partner after our breakers told him that maintenance still hadn't arrived. I told him it had happened while early shift was out there, and that they already radioed the ride manager. We were just waiting on maintenance. Turns out the early shift ride's manager knew I wasn't feeling well. It was the late shift manager who put me on the wheel and wouldn't allow me to work an easy ride. Apparently, the early manager had forgot because he was busy with shift change. Early shift manager had my back. Meanwhile, our break was over and we went back to our ride for the last 90 minutes of the shift. By this time, the park was nearly empty as people either headed home or were eating dinner or went to the park's pool for the rest of the night. Maintenance was just finishing up when we got to the ride. The maintenance guy asked me why I didn't call it in to my manager and why I didn't flag him when he went by earlier. I told him I wasn't feeling well, and my manager refused to let me work the slide. Our maintenance guys were a bunch of potheads, so he was like, "Alright, I see what you did there." We worked the last 90 minutes, only running the ride a handful of times. After that, they altered the rules to if maintenance didn't arrive in 5 minutes, to radio the manager again. 10. I used to volunteer with a collegiate religious non-profit that was stuck in the era it was established, which was back in the 1970s. As technology improved, they did the bare minimum to move along with the times. Accounting. There are loads of programs like Quicken and other modern accounting software, but the organization wanted to do all the finance written down in a ledger. Yes, a leather-bound ledger that was catered to one person who was in charge of the finance for the entire organization. This person was in their 60s and refused to change. Someone would eventually transfer the information in the ledger into an Excel doc. Contracts and agreements. Anything that needed signatures, such as applications and whatnot, they want the original form no matter what. Since the organization spans across the US, if someone was to sign something in New York, the Home Office in California wants the New York person to snail mail the page with their signature on it. They wouldn't accept faxes, scans, or digital signatures. Kept saying this was a legal reason, which is BS to me because I have had clients sign $1 million contracts with us using fax. Programs like DocuSign and whatnot with no complaints, and are all legally binding. Their main reason for all of these outdated rules was because they wanted a paper trail for everything. Every year our organization hosts a conference in Southern California, and it has anywhere between 100 to 120 students attending. Due to recent expansions to more campuses, we were expecting about 300 students. In order to make things less complicated, we wanted to make applications online. They can fill out an online form with an electric signature. For payments, we wanted to open up online payments as well as with the direct transfer, PayPal, even Venmo. Some students couldn't afford to go, so the organization offered scholarships to pay for the trip for them, but could only give 2 or 3 scholarships per campus. This required another application that we also wanted to bring online. All of those suggestions were denied for many reasons. Accounting wanted physical checks. Contracts wanted physical signatures because insurance won't accept electronic signatures. And the list of excuses go on, despite so many other organizations and multi-billion-dollar companies using these methods for years, and have had zero issues. So in order to make this as painful for them as possible, we started getting as many people to go to the conference as possible. We ended up getting about 370 students signing up from 20 universities. Normally, we'd collect all the applications and send them all in at once via a large manila folder, but instead, we told each student to mail their application separately, and to send their checks separately too, using a security envelope for safety reasons. On top of the main office getting over 700 plus applications and checks, each they had to open by hand, and to top the cake, 60 applications for scholarships, all in their own envelope. Also, did I mention that there were only 3 people processing all the paperwork? The main office was pissed at us, but all we said was that you wanted a paper trail, so now you know where every application came from, and finance can process each check individually. The next year, all of our suggestions were accepted for bringing everything online, and guess what? The 3 people who opposed change the most were the most surprised at how much easier everything was now that everything was accessible online. The ledger is now collecting dust. Hey everybody, Hellfreezer here, and thank you very much for listening to the Revenge's Ice Cream Archives, episode 18, and thank you very much to everybody who allowed me to use their stories. I probably sound a bit rougher than usual today. The wicked acid reflux reared its head again last night. Thankfully it's somewhat infrequent, it was just annoying. But we suck it up and we move on with the day, although I do always feel very, very drained after these little attacks happen. Not fun. Hadn't really eaten anything that would trigger it last night, but I guess maybe I'd eaten too close to bed or something. Anyway, I hope you're all having a great week, and I hope you continue to have a great week, whatever may come. So until next time, thank you very much for listening, and take very good care of yourselves.